What could make three seasoned lighthouse keepers vanish into thin air, leaving behind warm meals, a ticking clock, and no sign of struggle? Over a century later, the Flannan Isles lighthouse mystery still whispers one chilling question. What really happened on that rock? The Flannan Isles sit in the North Atlantic, west of Scotland's Outer Hebrides. Bare, storm-swept, and almost always shrouded in mist, they've long been regarded as cursed by local sailors. At the center of this lonely archipelago stands the Flannan Isles Lighthouse, built in 1899, perched 150 feet above sea level on Eilean Moor, the largest of the Isles. Just 1 year after it began operation, the lighthouse became the center of one of the most enduring maritime mysteries in modern history. It was December 15th, 1900. A passing steamer, the Arctur, noted that the lighthouse's beacon was dark. Days passed. No communication came from the keepers. Finally, on December 26th, the relief vessel Hesperus arrived with a replacement keeper. But as the crew approached, something was wrong. There was no one waiting on the landing. No flags. No sign of life. Captain James Harvey sent a man ashore. The front door was unlocked. Inside, the clocks had stopped. The fire had gone cold. A meal was set on the table, untouched. Coats belonging to 2 of the 3 men were missing, but the third coat was still hung up. The 3 lighthouse keepers, James Duckett, Thomas Marshall, and Donald MacArthur, were gone. None of them had ever left the island. A journal was found. Its final entries were strange. Marshall, the second assistant, had written about severe winds, worse than any he had ever seen, and how Duckett had been very quiet. Most unnerving, the entry claimed that MacArthur, known to be a tough, aggressive man, had been crying. The last entry, dated December 15th, read simply, "Storm ended. Sea calm. God is over all." But here's the thing. No storms were recorded in the area that day. The official investigation, led by Robert Muirhead of the Northern Lighthouse Board, suggested that a wave had swept the men away while they were securing equipment on the western landing. Heavy damage to the railings seemed to support this. But there were problems with that theory. First, regulations required at least 1 man to stay in the lighthouse at all times. So why were all 3 gone? Second, if they had gone out in a rush, why was the gate locked from the inside? And then came the rumors. Sailors passing the island days before the Hesperus arrived swore they saw the beacon lit on December 15th, 5 days after the keepers supposedly vanished. Others claimed they saw strange figures on the island, moving oddly, almost robotic, days after the disappearances. One report, buried in maritime logs, described an unnatural green glow coming from the tower, visible miles out at sea. And then there's the legend whispered in local pubs, that one of the men was never meant to be there, that a 4th man had been seen on the island during earlier visits, a shadowy figure who never spoke, who never left. As the years passed, theories spiraled. A rogue wave, murder-suicide, madness brought on by isolation and oceanic infrasound. Some believe the men were abducted by a passing vessel, or something far stranger. One popular legend holds that the men were claimed by the ancient spirits of the island, guardians of the standing stones that still dot Eilean Moor. In Celtic mythology, the Flannan Isles were sacred and cursed, a place where the boundary between worlds thins. Others point to the sheep found mutilated on the nearby isles in the weeks after the disappearances, untouched by predators, as if they had simply died of fright. And yet, no bodies were ever recovered. No evidence of departure. No final message. Just a perfectly kept lighthouse, and an overwhelming sense of dread. Over 120 years later, the lighthouse still stands. Now automated. No keepers. No warmth. But passing sailors still say the light flickers at odd hours. And some claim, on stormy nights, they hear faint shouting echoing from the rocks. Not words, just one name. over and over. MacArthur, MacArthur, MacArthur. So, what really happened to the keepers of the Flannan Isles? A storm? A struggle? Something from beyond? Or was the final journal entry a warning? God is over all. What else was watching?